This event was simply fantastic. I just finished playing through the Aetherium Wars event that is out right now in version 1.4 of Honkai Star Rail, and damn, this event struck so many chords with me that I just had to make this video discussing it, talking not only about how Aetherium Wars managed to exceed my expectations, but also talk about a personal theory of mine regarding the mode's future, if it has one. Why was Aetherium Wars such a great event to me? Where could it improve? And lastly, could it potentially be updated to become a form of versus multiplayer game mode for Honkai Star Rail, similar to the TCG game mode for Genshin Impact? Let's talk about it. Okay, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this particular section because it's not going to be like the main meat of this video, but real quick, I just want to say, if you're a Pokemon fan, you'll absolutely love the story in this mode. It is chock full of references while also putting its own Star Rail twist on things. For example, the IPC goons in this story are essentially Team Rocket, constantly harassing you around every corner. There's legit an important boss character named Mr. Giovanni, an entire sequence where you battle the Elite Four and finally become the champion in order to earn the title yourself, and there's even a final Champion Red battle on top of Mount Silver reference, I kid you not. As a guy who's been a Pokemon fan since I was a kid, this story was a joy to experience. I'm honestly curious about the opinions of players who didn't grow up with Pokemon's thoughts on the story, because bro, I feel like you miss out on almost all of the callbacks and references without that knowledge of the Pokemon IP. Still, the story was definitely one of the reasons why this event was so memorable and enjoyable to me. The other reason, oddly enough, was the gameplay. So the goal of the event was to win the title of champion in the International Tournament Festival, and that's it, nothing else after that. Players have to pass the trials of each of the 4 victory zones, i.e. gyms, one by one and defeat the championship contender, i.e. gym leader, to earn mastery marks, i.e. gym badges. Collecting 4 mastery marks will qualify you to enter the tournament at the very end of the game mode. During the challenge, you meet various characters and Aether Spirits and strengthen your Aether Spirit team by collecting, battling, training, and upgrading them through various means. But what are Aether Spirits? This is what surprised me the most when the Aetherium Wars event was revealed during the 1.4 livestream, because essentially they are the enemies that you fought throughout the entire main game of Honkai Star Rail, except in this game mode you can control them. Aether Spirits fall into one of 3 types: humanoid, mechanical, and aberrant. I really hope I'm pronouncing that last one correctly. The rest of this video is going to be really awkward if I'm not. The types counteract each other in a rock, paper, scissors type fashion, similar to the fire, water, grass type triangle in Pokemon, and the weapon triangle in Fire Emblem for anyone who's played that series. Humanoid counteracts mechanical, mechanical counters aberrant, and aberrant counters humanoid. Attacking enemies of a counter type deals bonus damage, while attacking enemies of a counteracting type deals less damage. Level up Aether Spirits, defeat challengers and Aether Spirits in victory zones to gain Aether Spirit upgrade data, and after that you get slots for expansion chips which you can equip to your Aether Spirits, which serves to buff them in unique ways, while in others kinda alters their game plan somewhat. You get these chips from victory zone challengers, chests, and hyperlink matches. Lather, rinse, repeat until you eventually beat the event. What started out as a simple and mindless game mode turned into a monstrous version of the main game's own turn-based combat system in its own right. Every Aether Spirit has its own unique skills and ultimates that can create very potent team synergies when used properly. God, there are so many team comps you can make in this mode, and the expansion chip system allows you to really customize the effectiveness of certain Aether Spirits and the role that they play in different teams. There were 4 main teams that I loved. As a guy who absolutely loves Kafka DLT teams, this mechanical combination of the Automaton Gatekeeper and Dragonfish for the DLT application, Turbo Trotter for the sustain, and the Grey Wolf for the shock DLT and premature DLT activations similar to Kafka was amazing to play with. Great for those longer fights with more defensive enemies, though now that I think about it, maybe I can make a more aggressive version of the team if I switched out the Gatekeeper for the Blaze out of space. While Trotter is the better sustain overall, I also had a blast experimenting with the Draco Lion due to its ability to shrug off fatal damage with its emergency mode status, which can be refreshed by its ultimate over and over again, which makes it shockingly durable if you give it the right chips to sustain itself. My humanoid team comp was super defensive as well. Silvermane Lieutenant backed up by a Cannoneer to boost his counterattack damage, a Gunner for that good old reliable single target damage, and a Trotter for sustain. All I had to do was make sure to give the Lieutenant the Firewall chip when you get it to increase his HP and his odds of getting attacked, and the team basically worked like magic. Then there's this guy right here, the Trampler. An oddly appropriate name considering how easily it stomps out the competition with its absurd base 672 attack once it gets going. So get this, the Trampler has a talent where whenever an ally or enemy is KO'd, it immediately gets a turn and a 30% damage boost. Sounds powerful, but incredibly situational, until I started using the automaton spider with it. Like in the main game, the spider's main goal is to charge up and eventually self-destruct with its ultimate, dealing a lot of blast AoE damage upon doing so. Highly recommend you use the sudden interjection chip on it to speed up the process. But guess what happens after your spider explodes? Your Trampler gets a turn, and any enemy that's barely hanging on after taking a spider explosion will definitely be KO'd by the Trampler right after, which gives it another turn. Rinse and repeat until the entire enemy team is, well, for lack of a better word, trampled. But my favorite team comp by far was one recommended to me by a viewer on one of my live streams once I got to the event's endgame. A Frigid Prowler with 3 supporting allies, both Incineration and Everwinter Shadewalker, and Turbo Trotter for good measure. So get this. The Frigid Prowler has a skill that absorbs HP from adjacent allies to not only heal itself, but give itself Conjunction of Frost stacks, which boosts its damage by 50% and can stack up to 10 times. But I bet you're thinking, wouldn't that just make the Prowler's teammates extremely vulnerable to enemy attacks? Yes, unless they're the Shadewalkers, who can self-buff their HP and damage resistance to crazy amounts, and only really need a healer like the Trotter and some defensive data chips to keep them alive while doing so. This essentially allows them to become living batteries for the Prowler. And once it's fully charged up, get this big hit off. Nice. Get another big hit off. Get another big hit off. Get up out my face. Let's go, baby. Frozen Storm is without question one of the best, if not the best ultimate in the game mode once Frigid Prowler is fully charged up, because anything that doesn't get straight up one-shot by it has a 50% chance to get frozen too. It is insane. This is without a doubt one of the best teams that I've found in Aetherium Wars personally. There's probably even more effective team comps that players have found within this limited mode. And while I do love the amount of options available, it does lead to the main critique that I have with the event. You are constantly switching between different team members and changing their expansion ship loadouts to fit accordingly. And while there are 6 slots available to save specific teams, there's no similar loadout system for the expansion ships that the spirits can equip, which can make the process of repeatedly navigating through the menu to find what ships are available for your unit and which ones are on other spirits that you have benched a bit clunky. If and when this event returns in the future, being able to save expansion ship sets for each individual Aether Spirit to switch between would be a nice quality of life feature. It's also worth mentioning that because the Aether Spirits are based on the enemies that you fight in the base game, that the available 19 spirit roster to choose from at the event's endgame can feel somewhat limited, since there are currently only 3 regions to pull potential Aether Spirits from in the game right now, that being Herta Space Station, Belobog, and the Lofu. And it's also unfortunate that you're only allowed to use 1 copy of each individual Aether Spirit at a time for each team. The small roster size is okay for the limited event that the mode is used for, but if the event returns in some shape or form, maybe the roster can be expanded upon in the future once newer worlds with their own unique enemies are released. I wonder how the Sanctus Medicus enemies would function in Aetherium Wars, for example. Maybe some HP stealing or self-revival gimmick? Who knows? Speaking of which, let's talk about the final question I proposed at the beginning of this video. Could Aetherium Wars potentially be updated to become a form of versus multiplayer game mode for Honkai Star Rail, similar to the TCG game mode for Genshin Impact? But before I dive into my own personal thoughts and opinions, I just wanted to point out that prior to this video's release, I posted a community poll on my community page asking my viewers how they felt about the situation. And I was pretty surprised with the results. At the time of me making this statement right here, there was a total of 41 votes, and 39% of voters liked Aetherium Wars and would like to see it become a multiplayer mode. And roughly 62% of players were not interested in the mode becoming permanent. A total of a good chunk of you guys actually enjoyed Aetherium Wars, and a small 12% of you guys didn't enjoy Aetherium Wars, probably because of the criticisms that I mentioned earlier that were more severe for you, which that's pretty unfortunate. But yeah, these were some pretty interesting poll results, and I'm very grateful for you guys for taking the time out of your day to just answer the poll. Really appreciate it. As for why I personally believe it could be Honkai Star Rail's versus mode in the future, when broken down to its most basic level, the gameplay in Aetherium Wars is essentially the same as in the main game. The only differences are there's no triangular type system. Instead of the main cast of characters use the Aether Spirits, and instead of relics you have the expansion chips that you can attach to the Aether Spirits. Besides that, the mechanics of Aetherium Wars are basically the same as the base game, and I honestly believe that this works to this game mode's benefit, because it's less of a hassle compared to, say, inventing an entirely new game from scratch like with the Genshin Impact TCG. This leads into the second reason why I'm in support of this mode becoming an option for players to play against each other, which, in order to properly explain, well, that requires me to explain a personal story of mine, I guess, since I don't actually have any hard footage to show to actually prove it, unfortunately. So a few days prior to the version 1.4 livestream event, I received an in-game routine survey asking questions about the particular version of the game and what I'd like to look forward to in the future. We've all gotten these surveys in the in-game mail before. You guys know what I'm talking about. I answered this survey, but didn't record myself answering this survey because I just straight up didn't think the questions within would become so relevant so quickly. I just wanted the credits, bro. So unfortunately, y'all have to just have faith that the following information that I give from this point on is what happened. My apologies, bro. That's on me for not recording. I just didn't think it would be so important. Okay, but within that particular survey, there were 4 questions that were asked that stood out to me. 1. Would you be interested in a form of multiplayer mode being added to Honkai Star Rail? 2. Would you want this multiplayer mode to be competitive or cooperative? 3. Would you want this mode to have similar or entirely unique gameplay compared to the main game? And 4. How important would it be for this multiplayer mode to allow players to engage with its features without any form of monetization such as microtransactions? So I finished this survey prior to the version 1.4 livestream and didn't think much of it. And then Aetherium Wars was revealed in the livestream and a huge realization occurred in my head. What if Aetherium Wars was the theoretical multiplayer mode being discussed in that survey I answered, and the Honkai Star Rail development team is gauging players' reaction to this event as a guide for how to properly implement the mode in the future? It makes sense because the gameplay is essentially a condensed version of the main game's turn-based combat, which fits somewhat in line with the third question. Now let me be clear here, I am not a part of the Honkai Star Rail development team, and I am not a leaker. I'm just a guy that likes to make videos about the games I love. All that is to say, I am not by any means hard confirming that a versus competitive mode is coming to Honkai Star Rail. It's just an educated guess that I'm making after my experience with the event, and I'm openly stating that I could 100,000% be wrong here, and if I am, then it is what it is. No harm, no foul. However, if this event does become a permanent versus game mode, this would be a massive win for Honkai Star Rail players wishing to have more in-game interactivity with other players in some fashion, beyond just using support units by players on their friends list. Plus, this could give both the dev team and players tons of reusable value from the expanding pool of overworld enemies, With each new world that we come across as Honkai Star Rail continues, the devs and players would have to consider not only how newer enemies function when facing them in the main game, but also how to go about using them in the Aetherium game mode. And plus, let's be honest people, being able to use certain enemies like the Trampler and the Arumitan Gatekeeper is so cool. Admit it bro, I know you wanna. But that's gonna do it for this video. If you guys enjoyed it, please make sure to leave a like. It helps YouTube know that my content is decent enough to share around. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more. And comment down below how you feel about Aetherium Wars, and if you'd like it to be a multiplayer mode of some kind. Or maybe if you'd want something else entirely. I would greatly appreciate the support as these videos take a ton of time and effort to make. Alright, that's it for me. Have a good one.